Hi, team. Welcome to 10 Talks. Today's conversation is all about winning your well being, and we're going to focus on raising your leadership Q. What does well being and leadership have to do with each other? Well, most importantly, we've got to start with you. We need you to lead yourself through the change that matters to you. And today we're talking nutrition. We've got Dr. Hunter, who is on our team to really share with us from a lifestyle management perspective what's going on with the foods that we put in our bodies. What are they doing? Is it working for us, not for us? Today's conversation is all about winning nutrition. Thank you for having the courage to be a champion for you and really join us as we figure out what you're eating and what's it doing to your body. So, Dr. Hunter, explain to us really the power of nutrition and our choices.
This whole food plant based, and I like to say plant focused. My goal is not really to get people to eliminate all animal products from their life unless that's something they're committed to. Um, but I really want to focus on how can we get the most plants in our day to day. And this plate that you see here is something that the USDA has created in their campaign to try to get people to 7 to 13 servings a day. And it's called the My Plate method. And you can see that down the center of the plate, there's basically a line. And I do this when I counsel patients on the fold. So if this is your bowl or plate at any meal or snack, half of it to get to 7 to 13 servings has to be fruits and veg. Then you have two quarters that are left. One is a lean protein. So again, if you don't want to get rid of animal protein, it's not my goal, it's your goal, right? I'm here to support your health. But a lean protein, and then another quarter is your whole grains. And so this is how we would make a really filling meal. And there's a couple things I want to talk about in this. One, when you choose a plant protein, you get fiber, right? And we've started to talk about how important fiber is and how it helps you feel full. It helps you with satiety. It helps bowel movements. It slows down the digestion of your food. And so you don't get that from animal protein. And plant proteins are also very low in cholesterol. So if that's something that you're working on, the fiber is going to help manage the cholesterol. And also you're not going to get added cholesterol or fat. They're usually very low in fat. Now, some people will say, well, what about nuts? I think nuts are an amazing protein source, and they also have very healthy fats, very unsaturated fats. Um, the really interesting thing about nuts is that if you're going to eat nuts, try to choose raw, unroasted nuts. And the secret with that is that those raw nuts, the omega fatty acids that are in the nuts are still intact. When you roast them, it actually alters the makeup of the fatty acid. And by eating raw nuts, that fatty acid actually gets absorbed in your bloodstream, goes and searches out bad cholesterol, binds to it, and then brings it back into your gut where you excrete it. So you don't even absorb the fat calories from those nuts, and they're working for you to kind of scrub your arteries. And it has been said that 1 ounce of raw nuts a day will decrease your cardiovascular risk, so the risk of having a heart attack or stroke, by 60%.
Wow.
Um, I get chills because it's like we don't have medicines that can do that. So again, I think people get caught up on calories. And what I want to say is that a calorie is not a calorie is not a calorie. So a calorie from the left side of the screen from a donut or a fried food, again, is a calorie that gets readily absorbed and is going to go into your bloodstream and need to get dealt with. Whereas something like a calorie from nuts or the calories that you're going to get from these whole grains, you're not absorbing them up top. They get down to the lower colon and the microbiome works on them. There was actually a recent study by the Washington Post reviewed that looked at people eating a highly processed diet and people eating a high fiber diet and what the difference was in the amount of calories that they excreted every day. So undigested calories in your poop, it was about 150 to 180 a day for people eating a highly processed diet. Again, that idea, all those calories are getting absorbed up top. And for people eating the high fiber diet, it was up to 400 calories a day that you get to feel full. You get to enjoy eating the food. Your microbiome's working on it. And the microbiome not only helps digest our food and our fiber, but it takes those foods and makes new substances that interact in our bodies. And it does best when it has plants to do that with. And then you poop out, a third of your calories for the day. So a whole food, plant-focused eating plan is actually a great plan for weight loss and weight management because you're going to feel full, you're going to be satisfied, you're going to perform really well because again, we're having high value protein, whole grain carbs, lots of oil for your tank, um, and you are not absorbing all those calories.
Wow. Okay. Well, the good news is that you've laid it out beautifully. I certainly understand the why. I love the component that I can eat raw nuts and it really, make me 60% healthier from a cardiovascular perspective. That's a huge winning strategy.
So again, fiber keeps coming up today. Last time it was our heart that was the theme, and guess what? Fiber is good for your heart too. Um, but again, so when we think about lifestyle changes, you can have things that are a takeaway, like we talked about, right? Getting rid of some of the bad things. People don't like takeaways. So I like to say what you can have more of. So instead of no white foods, which is also some, it's more brown foods. So I would still recommend less white foods unless, again, cauliflower or radishes. But trying to spin that in a positive way is choose brown foods. So again, for that example of brown rice is rice. That is how it comes off the plant. And what happens, what we do to make it white rice is we take off all the fiber and we take out the protein and the fat. And we're left with the endosperm, which is the carbohydrate. So, the seed of rice that we eat is actually a baby rice plant, right? This is it's packaged, it's life in a packaged form so that this seed could get into the ground and grow into another rice plant. So it has everything it needs to do that. And the fiber covering is protecting that seed. But when we make it into white rice, we take away all the fiber, we take away all the protein and the fat that the baby plant would use to grow, and it's just the energy left. It's just the carbohydrates. And so again, that is much more readily digested in our upper GI tract. That leads to a big blood sugar spike and then a crash as our body deals with it. And so when you choose the brown foods, so brown rice, whole wheat, quinoa, farro, millet. I mean, there's lots of these. We think of them as ancient grains, right? Things that civilizations evolved on. Um, and then I put sweet potatoes in that brown food category as well because they're very high in fiber, and you can see those beautiful colors on the screens. Purple sweet potatoes are better for you, by the way. Um, but sweet potatoes versus white potatoes are going to be a better choice for satiety, for the antioxidants in them, and it's because of the fiber. So really thinking about in that quarter of my plate, and again, it's not, the my plate method, the half fruits and veg, quarter protein, quarter whole grains, that's a shift for most people, right? Because we're used to half of the plate being the protein within another large portion of the carbohydrate, which is usually very processed, and the veggies are the side dish. So it's really the shift of make the veggie your main and use the protein, whether it's plant-based or animal product, as the condiments or as the topping. It's thinking about it in a different way, but you get that, nice little side of your whole grain. So it might mean trying some new things, right? We're learning some new skills. Maybe we're going to experiment, cook quinoa for the first time. And certainly some people truly have gluten insensitivity. If you've been diagnosed with celiac disease, I don't encourage you to eat wheat products or other products that have gluten in them. However, it's my take that most people do not have a wheat intolerance, they have a processed flour intolerance. So things like whole wheat, minimally processed wheat products, barley and farro, again, are whole grains that also happen to have gluten. So you can kind of try these things out in a less processed form. And again, if you know something doesn't work well with your body, I'm not recommending you eat that, but trying some of these new grains and using them in different ways. I love throwing farro in a soup or a stew. It really makes it more filling. It kind of gives it a nutty texture and flavor. So there's just lots of different ways to incorporate more brown foods.
So interesting in terms of back to that whole food analogy that you gave is that the closer it is to what it is naturally, the healthier it's going to be for us. So I really love anchoring in that and just being very aware of where did this come from? How much of a processing has it gone through? And how can I stick with really finding the natural side of it to add to what's best for my body?
Right. Yeah, and I mean, you can do this by looking at the ingredient list on a packaged product. Usually if it comes in a box, a can, a jar, it's going to be processed on some level. Um, but if it has 3 to 5 ingredients, and like the second one isn't sugar, it's probably an okay choice, right? It's identifying, can I say all the things that are included? Do I know how to pronounce all the things that are included in this? Really thinking about the food that we eat. Is it still food by the time it's been highly processed? And so, I like we do whole wheat pasta in our house, so I'm going to say I still eat pasta. I always want people to look on the nutrition label for the grams of fiber, which is right there under the carbohydrates. The the FDA actually changed, and producers now have to list the grams of added sugar. So again, if an apple had a nutrition label, it would say 8 grams of sugar, but it would be 0 grams of added sugar, right? It's what naturally occurs. Added sugar is the food processors just pouring in cane sugar because guess what? Sugar lights up the dopamine centers in our brains and we're addicted to it. And then look at the protein. So if you're scanning a nutrition label, that's a good place to go. Um, and so something like whole wheat pasta is going to have 3 to 5 grams of fiber and 3 to 5 grams of protein and 0 grams of added sugar. And there's some really good brands out there that are available in national grocery store chains that have one ingredient, whole wheat, right? Some of even for our gluten intolerant folks, some of the new pastas that are lentil or veggie based or bean based. Some of the chickpea pastas are really popular. There's a red lentil pasta also from a national chain, and they're pretty good. They hold up in cooking, they don't fall apart. And again, looking at the ingredient label, it's red lentils or chickpea powder, right? So you can, it's processed, right? We can say it's minimally processed, but it's probably the closest you can get unless you're going to go mill the grain yourself and make pasta at home, right?
So I love the new thinking about really staying focused on how we're feeling with the food that we're putting into our bodies, that awareness of it, and letting go of the old thinking about everything's about the calories. So explain to us what different foods are doing, how they're affecting our bodies versus just counting calories.
Yeah, exactly, Carlette. Like I said, a calorie is not a calorie. And the idea that I want you to think about is what we call caloric or nutritional density. So this graphic is from Forks Over Knives. It's a great plant-based eating source. And I go through this graphic with almost all of my patients because a lot of people come to see me for weight loss or how do I maintain a healthy weight? And so again, the idea is that different foods have higher packed with calories. So if I drank 3 tablespoons of olive oil, which would be disgusting, but it would be 500 calories that I would have just consumed. And as you can see, it fills up your stomach about this much. So not really impactful on how hungry I'm going to feel. Dairy is a little bit better, but it's a pretty densely caloric food. Cheese is actually where Americans get most of our saturated fat because we eat so much of it. Meat, 500 calories of meat is going to fill up your stomach about halfway, maybe a little less. If you eat 500 calories of black beans, sweet potatoes, and brown rice, you're getting pretty good bang for your buck, right? You're going to start feeling full, like, and you've been chewing a lot. This is taking time, and you're getting full. And if you eat 500 calories of broccoli, not only are you never going to eat broccoli again because you've just chewed for 2.5 hours and eaten 5 pounds of it, but you're going to be pretty darn full. So, again, as I was saying, if you're choosing minimally processed plant foods, you don't have to worry about the calorie counting, A, because you're going to be excreting some of them. But B, you really can't eat more than 500 to 750 calories in a meal without feeling full, especially if you're eating mindfully, right? If you're sitting down at a table, if you're having nice conversation, if you're putting your fork down between bites. I mean, this is not how I eat at all. I eat standing at my desk in 3.5 minutes. Um, but when you sit down and you can have time to enjoy that meal and savor what you're putting in your mouth, it also kind of helps your stomach get that full register. Like, okay, I've had enough, right? And then you can step back. So again, focusing on the whole foods, the plant foods, is really makes a big impact. So this is one strategy that I train all of my patients on for weight management is how do you get more fruits and veg into every meal so that you can feel full for less calories.
Yeah, what a winning strategy to really respect what it's doing internally for us and also mentally how we're feeling. So incredibly connected. I'm a huge lover of cheese. And so is it good, bad? What are we looking for cheese to be a positive?
Um, I would use cheese as a condiment if you're going to use it. Dairy products in general and cheese are something that, and I am a self-proclaimed cheese addict in recovery. I don't know, whatever, um, 360 days clean or something like that. But I don't eat cheese anymore. And I used to love cheese. I literally used to eat sour cream with a spoon.
Mm,
And I started doing a program where it was cutting out some of these processed foods, and we do it for 10 days every month or every other month. And after a couple months, I realized when I ate cheese, I actually felt terrible. And it
mm.
was like a pretty quick reaction for me. Um, so I don't eat dairy at all anymore because it didn't make sense for my body. Not that I, am lactose intolerant. It wasn't having GI distress, but it just didn't make me feel good. And it was taking it away that brought that awareness for me. And what I know about cheese and dairy products is that cheese is pretty highly processed, has a lot of salt, has a lot of saturated fat. And I think of dairy products as being fairly inflammatory. So if you're working with pain reduction, really getting rid of dairy can be a helpful tool. So really the only dairy products that I recommend to people is maybe, a quarter to a half cup of a fat-free, plain no sugar added yogurt just for the probiotic effect, but getting some more of those healthy bacteria into our bodies. So, again, if when I'm counseling patients, if they say, well, I can never give up my cheese, again, it's not my goal. I can just
Right.
give you the data. But it is something to think about in moderation. This is my passion. The nutrition piece of lifestyle medicine is really how I found out about lifestyle medicine. And so I love having the evidence behind how these changes can improve our health and reverse chronic disease. I love counseling patients on these changes. And I'll end with one other interesting fact about our microbiome that we can directly influence the makeup of our microbiome by what we put in our mouths. And it happens very quickly. So within about 36 hours, you can completely change the makeup of your microbiome. And what you may notice as you start implementing some of these changes, if you start with the rainbow diet or start choosing whole grains, is that your cravings start to change. So it is actually thought that our microbiome drives our cravings more than our thinking mind, because there's a huge connection between the brain and the gut. And so when you crave a candy bar at 3 p.m., it's not because you actually want that. It's because you have bugs in your gut that crave what I call cheap fat and sugar. That's what they want to eat. So what I crave at 3 p.m. is an apple with peanut butter because I have bugs in my gut that want fiber. So again, it's about what we put in our body, what we do with our body. We have that choice moment to moment. I heard recently we actually make over 220 choices about food per day. And if you've got your gut in alignment and you're feeding it plant foods, you're going to actually be driven to make a healthier choice. So that's some new hope for you.
Dr. Hunter, you are a wealth of information. We love getting fed all of this fabulous information. And what's powerful is that we are set up to actually take this information and do something with it that really is about how we want to win our lifestyle and champion what matters to us in our life. So this week's challenge team is all about raising your leadership cue. Lead you to be very intentional about being aware of what you're putting in your body. Is it working for you? Is it giving you the result that you want? Try some new things, lead into change, lead into trying something new, lead into really exploring, letting go of old habits and thinking about, I'm going to be really intentional this week to make a change and see how it affects me. So Dr. Hunter, thank you so much for the gift of being on our team and supporting us as we learn about lifestyle medicine, and most importantly, champion what matters for us and win our life.